What's up, guys? It's Mitch with SC Weather. I thought I'd make a special video talking about major winter storms that's happened over the past 2 decades. So from now till back in the year 2000, just kind of bringing back good memories, bad memories for some, unfortunately, since winter just looks really non-wintry like. Very gloomy day out there, cold day. So I thought I would take some time to make a video talking about major winter storms over the past 2 decades, and maybe some of y'all, and it can jog some of y'all's memories. Maybe it can, maybe y'all can tell y'all's personal stories on them. Because since 2000, I mean, we've had some pretty major winter weather events. So I wanted to kind of give my stories on them, my memories, what I learned from them. I'm 28 years old, so anything kind of 2000 after, I don't have much memory on, but I figured that 90s weren't very eventful anyways here in the state of South Carolina, winter weather wise. So that being said, let's jump right into it. I hope y'all enjoy this video because I kind of been looking forward to doing it. So here we go. So one that a lot of you all probably remember is the huge snowstorm in 2000, and how it snuck up on everybody, and how it was just a huge surprise for everybody. I've talked to people over the years, countless people, about how this storm just came out of nowhere, and it did. It was a huge model bust. The models started coming in at the last second. I mean, they came in such at the last second that you could just look at the radar and tell that something was happening that the models weren't showing. Models are a lot more advanced now these days, but a lot of people learned a lot off this storm. And this was just a huge winter storm. There was isolated totals throughout the state that got a lot more snow than others. For instance, the upstate of South Carolina, kind of Chesterfield area, Pageland area, it was like a little slither up in that area that kind of got hit really hard. I'm going to show you a map here. Melissa Griffin, by the way, she is awesome. She's provided some great graphics for me, so shout out to her. But here's a good graphic. As you can tell, it was really isolated totals, but you see right there in Chesterfield County, kind of there where it gets real close to that dark, to that bluish color, which is, man, over 15 inches of snow, as you can look at the kind of the graphic key down here. But I actually had a friend of mine. He's not my friend, he's my cousin, a really close cousin actually, and he lived in Mount Croghan, which, if you don't know where that is, it's about 10 miles east of Pageland. And he said that they got 1.5 feet of snow. He was probably 7 years old at the time. He says he knows for sure that they had to get over a foot, close to 1.5 feet of snow. Which, if I flip over here to, let me see, another awesome graphic provided by Melissa. This was kind of like the cold chart for the month of January in 2000 for Pageland. And if you kind of look down there right at the 25th time period, 4.5 inches of snow on the 24th, a foot of snow on the 25th. So for a long time, I actually questioned my cousin. I was like, there's no way y'all got that much off of that snow, because I know Charlotte got huge range of snow, and here in Columbia, I think they picked up anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow, depending on where you were. But isolated areas up there in the upstate, huge totals, right there. And it just depended on where you were, it depended on where that huge band set up. There was a pretty nasty band that set up. Let me see if I can get some good graphics. I believe this is the radar image from that storm. As you can tell, I mean, that is a big time band that kind of set up right there in the upstate. This was kind of later when the band pulled off, but it was such a big storm, and it snuck up on everybody. And here's the same thing as Pageland. Here's like a Chester preview of that storm. And again, this one just shows the amount of precip that fell, which got 1.55 inches, I guess, a precip, you can say. I mean, that's all frozen for the most part. I mean, so that they got a huge amount. I'm gonna flip back to this screen here. Right here, now granted, the whole late January 2000 period was one of the best stretches of winter in the last 2 decades. There was a lot of minor events, a lot of big time events. I was young, guys. I was probably like, how old was I? I was 8 years old. I turned 9 that year. And I was in Charlotte during that storm. At that age, I didn't realize that southeast Charlotte was getting a foot of snow, and I was in West Charlotte getting 6 inches. And I was too young then to kind of realize what was happening in the weather world, and the huge sudden shift of a snowstorm that was occurring. And I wish I had the graphic, but a local meteorologist tweeted out a cool graphic about a week ago, basically showing the Columbia National Weather Service here in the Midlands, CAE, basically showing early that morning the storm hitting, basically just calling for some, small chance of some rain and snow showers, maybe some flurries, no accumulation. I think that was like at 9 a.m. that day. All of a sudden, I think it was like 2:30. All of a sudden, when another discussion came out from the National Weather Service saying, okay, this is getting serious. As you can see on radar, something major is coming. I think I have a radar picture of that. I may not have it. I thought I had it, but I don't. But basically, it got real when all of a sudden you started seeing moisture coming out of Georgia with enough cold air in place, and it trapped people in Columbia. It's because nobody was expecting it. Nobody, even meteorologists. It just came out of nowhere. It was the storm track was supposed to be well offshore, where the moisture just wasn't going to make it inland, and that was a crazy storm. I think Columbia, if we go back to that map right here, I think that Columbia it just depended on where you were and where the bands set up. I don't know about that area right there in Orange and Fairfield and Chester County. That's kind of weird. I know they probably got more snow than that, but man, it was just incredible. As you can see, Columbia area got, depending on where you were, 2 to 6, 7 inches of snow. It was just kind of to where that heavier band set up. This thing moved. Just a crazy storm, guys. Just a crazy week of weather. And what's crazy, let's just go back to the Pageland graphic. Look how cold it was from the 21st through the 31st. So that snow, and I've heard it from a lot of people, that snow stayed on the ground for a long time. And there was minor events in that time period that was just crazy. It was one of the, I wish I had more memory of it, but I was so young. But that was one of the coolest stretches of weather for anybody who remembers it, who was old enough to actually enjoy it. For any weather geeks out there, I mean, that was crazy. That was a crazy little time period. And so I'm not going to spend this long on each event, but I think that event, a lot of people have awesome memories of how sudden and drastic of a change it was. And, some places picked up over a foot of snow. National Guard was called up there in Chesterfield County to pull some people out, and it was just very sudden. So that's it on that one. Let's move on. Another storm was a major one, especially here in Columbia, because the Midlands of South Carolina was kind of a jackpot area for this storm. And unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of memories of this storm. I really don't. I've tried to, when I contacted Melissa Griffin for these graphics, I did it to try to jog some memories. But God, man, it's just crazy. I just do not have a ton of memory of this storm. This is probably the only storm in the 2000s where I just do not have a lot of memory on it. And it was the early January 2002 storm. And, Columbia picked up from anywhere from between 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of snow. It was especially a big winter there in Fairfield County. And this is the map here. It was centered right there in the central part of the state. Like I said, I wish I had more memories of that storm. I just don't, so I can't really talk on it much. But anybody else with memories on it would be great. Another storm was a year later in January. Got this graphic from National Weather Service in Greenville. I remember this storm. I remember it wasn't that big of a deal here in Columbia. I think it started snowing that morning. This was January 23rd, 2003. It started snowing that morning. Got a couple inches of snow, a few inches of snow, and then it was melting away by the end of the day. Up in the upstate, jackpotted big time, especially around Rock Hill. Places around Rock Hill, I think, got 6, 7, 8 inches of snow, especially up there to Spartanburg and stuff. So that was a pretty big event. Not a major event, but it was a pretty big event for snow lovers. So let's go on and move past that. So I think the next major winter storm, and this was a big time ice storm for the Midlands and the southern Midlands of South Carolina. More of a mixture up in the upstate, was the 2004 ice storm. And I know you guys got some memories of this. This storm, for me, it was crazy. I remember I was in 6th grade. I think it was a Saturday. I think I could go back and verify that, but it was a Saturday. I think it was in the upper 60s outside. I was playing in the woods with my friends, just being a kid. I remember I was in shorts. It was a beautiful day, and I was starting to develop a love for weather. But of course, being in the 6th grade, I didn't know a ton. But I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know they were calling for it. I know they were, but I just didn't realize what was coming. I guess just playing with my friend and having a good time, being a kid, I didn't realize what was coming. But we had an ice storm on the way. And the next day, I remember waking up and my grandpa calling me, being like, "Hey boy, go look outside. There's icicles probably hanging from your roof." And I'm thinking, no way, it was 60, 70 degrees outside yesterday. Sure enough, go outside and I got icicles hanging from my roof. I live right there. For anybody local, I lived in Lexington, right there on Dooley Road. Let's say it's like a frontage road that goes up there. There's a Murphy's gas station, a Bojangles right there near the interstate. I lived on Dooley Road. There's 2 brick houses. I lived on one of them, and I remember it just got so bad so fast, and it was the first and only ice storm, honestly. First and only ice storm where I remember it was freezing rain the entire event. Freezing rain, guys, if you don't know completely what it is, it's just rain. But at the surface, the temperatures are 32 or lower. So it was my first experience with that, and I kept thinking, man, I wish it was snowing, but it was just a major cold air damming event that set up, and man, the freezing rain fell from all day Monday until I think most of the day Monday, all day Sunday until most of the day Monday, and it was just crazy. Here's a map that that I think all the guys from the National Weather Services kind of put together. And you see a 1/4 to 1/2 inch down there in the southern Midlands. I swear it was more than that. Man, I just think that we got at least 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch of ice here in the Lexington area. And it was crazy. I just remember, I just swear I think we got more than that, but I don't think they have enough detailed, I guess, ice totals on what really fell and what accumulated. So they kind of threw just a rough estimate map together. But that was a big one. Huge storm. And I don't think I have really any other graphics on that, but I just remember I remember the power. What was crazy is the power never went out at my house, but it was going out at everybody else's house. And I remember just sitting out. I remember sitting out on the back porch, just listening to trees fall. It sounded like a war zone going off in the woods, and it was just crazy. I remember my mom just kept telling me, "Do not get too close to the woods. Do not get too close in the woods." Of course, me being a kid, I wanted to get as close as possible. But that was a cool storm because I was out of school for I think 3 days. Really cool storm. I know a lot of y'all probably have memories on that one for sure. So the next, and in case y'all haven't noticed, I'm kind of going from 2000 to present time. I'm sure y'all noticed that by now, but the next major winter storm was, I know everybody in the Rock Hill area remembers this one, the upstate area, and especially York County, Chester County, even Fairfield. The late February 2004 storm. This thing was kind of isolated but massive where it was hit. This storm, at a young age, I was in 6th grade. It was the same year the ice storm hit Columbia. It was a big one. I don't think the totals were expected, but I mean it was pretty much predicted to be a pretty big storm. It sleeted and rained all day in Columbia. I think the 26th of February 2004, and I was like, man, even at a young age, I was thinking, man, I hope it just turns to snow or something. You know, I didn't understand the dynamics of it. But as you can see from this map, I mean, there was places that got 2 foot of snow in Rock Hill. I mean, just flat out 2 feet of snow. I remember I was visiting my grandpa in the Lexington Hospital here in the Midlands, and the sleet rain mix briefly turned to heavy wet snow, and it started sticking immediately. And I'm thinking, man, this is awesome. We just went to snow. It only lasted about 20 minutes. I mean, it was starting to stick on everything, but it only lasted about 20 minutes, and it went back to rain and sleet, and I was so disappointed. I did not realize at the time that one county above us and Fairfield County was getting half a foot of snow. There was such a distinct cutoff with this storm from rain and sleet, nothing, to heavy wet snow. I mean, it was just a couple mile difference. I think the storm happened on a Thursday and a Friday. Basically, the more you climbed up 77, the interstate, it just got higher and higher and fast. My dad lived in West Charlotte at that time, and they got over a foot. But I remember my dad picked me up from Columbia to go visit my dad that weekend. And I remember going up 77, and just north of Blythewood, the snow piles on the interstate started piling up more and more and more. It was just, I was so jealous, but I was glad I got to see the snow. To this day, my dad says he's never seen it snow that hard. That was one of the biggest snowfalls ever, and just a crazy event. The cutoff of snow to nothing was ridiculous. And unfortunately, I was on the south end, and that was my first. I was young, but that was my first true heartbreak of whiffing on a winter storm. It was just so. I was just so upset. I remember my dad calling me. He's like, "Boy, it's snowing like hell up here," and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." But yeah, there's that one. I'm sure y'all remember. So after 2004, there was a few years there where there was nothing but very minor events all the way up until probably about 2007. There was a couple storms in 2007 I'm not really going to talk much about, that mainly affected like the far upstate, like York area and stuff like that. Even Columbia picked up a little minor something, but they weren't that significant. Here in the Midlands, they didn't see nothing. I mean, that was the last event, 2004 till about 2009. We had a powerful upper level low. This is one of the biggest busts by some of the meteorologists ever here in Columbia, South Carolina, and it really wasn't their fault. Columbia got what you call dry slotted. I remember they canceled school ahead of this storm. I think Columbia was supposed to pick up 2 to 4 inches of snow. This was March 2nd, 2009. And they literally got nothing. I mean, I don't even think anything fell. It really wasn't because of temperatures. It was because we got dry slotted, which means, upper level lows are tricky. If you get under that heavy precipitation, then you're getting hit hard. If you miss and you whiff, you ain't getting nothing probably. And Columbia just got whiffed bad. And let's see, I got a radar image here, and it just shows, it doesn't really show it color coded here, but it shows the heavier precip, and the dark greens kind of just riding over the upstate and just missing Columbia Point South. And meteorologists got dissed pretty bad about this one. And I mean, it was just something that all models didn't see, and it was just a whiff. And now places in the upstate pretty much got what they were predicting, right there in just west of York County. I was in Rock Hill. I just happened to drive up to my dad's. I think they were calling for 4 to 6 inches in Rock Hill, and like 2 to 4 in Columbia, 1 to 3. I was like, I'm just gonna go up to my dad's so I can see a little more. Thank God I did, because if I didn't, I would have missed out big time. So I ended up getting to see it. It was pretty heavy snow. It was all snow, and it was really heavy at some times. I think places up in North Carolina, like in Gastonia, they had some jackpot areas. They got like 10 inches of snow. I do remember a week later it was almost 80 degrees, so it was crazy. Gaffney was a big winner in the state. Got 8 inches of snow. So that was a pretty neat storm because it was upper level low. But so I always think of this. I was a senior in high school, and I always think of this storm as a makeup for the storm prior in March in 2009. I know everybody in the Midlands remembers this storm. It happened almost 10 years ago. It was that right before it was a Friday, 2010 in February. Here's a map. I know y'all remember this. 7 to 8 inches of snow. Columbia was a jackpot. Columbia Airport, I think, picked up 8.6 inches of snow. It started falling. It started falling like 3:30. And I remember they said it might start off as a brief period of rain. It never was rain. It was all snow. And it snowed like crazy from 3:30 to probably about midnight. Not a long duration storm, but it packed a punch. And the track of this thing was, to this day, I look to this track of this storm as the bookmark track that you need for a winter storm. There wasn't ridiculously cold air in place, but it was enough cold air to suppress this storm just south enough, just for us to get hit and us to get some of the heaviest snow. I was a senior in high school. It happened on a Friday. We got out of school like 1 hour before the snow started. One of my all-time favorite memories. I made like an 8-foot snowman with my friend. And it wasn't a dangerous storm. It was a beautiful storm because it fell when everybody was at home. It was accurately predicted for the most part, except we got more than expected. But that really wasn't a big deal because everybody was happy. It had been so long since we had seen a storm. I think it was just a cool storm for everybody. If you go back and look at the map, places even in Charleston was actually originally supposed to be predicted to get more than us, but it ended up trending a little bit more north as far as snowfall totals, and we ended up getting more. But they got a lot down there too, for certainly for Charleston standards. But that was an awesome storm for real, and it ended up being the start of a very active period that went to the end of the year. And we'll talk about that one next. I like to talk about this storm because it happened a day after Christmas. I mean, it almost gave us a white Christmas. This was a winter storm that I can't remember how much they were calling for here in the Central Midlands. Maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow, but it was so isolated, and it was very hard to pin down who was going to get what because the totals. Let me flip over to this map here. The totals, as you can see, very sporadic. And I can verify those huge totals in Fairfield County are accurate because I remember I went to my dad's the day after the storm to visit him for Christmas and stuff. And I remember just like, wow, man, they got so much more snow up here. And they did. They got a little jackpot area there. And right there in Lexington, where you see the little heavier than normal than everywhere else totals. I just happened to live there. We got about 2.5 inches of snow. It's funny, right there. For people who are familiar with the area, right there in the Porky D's area, kind of Manual Church Road area, got 2.5 inches of snow. But it's funny, you drove down to Red Bank area, and they maybe had a slushy inch. So it just depended on where you were. And that was a cool event because it happened right after Christmas. But an even bigger event happened 2 weeks later. And it was this storm. This was the first time I ever heard thunder snow, guys. It happened at about 4:30 in the morning. There's actually a video of it. Somebody has on YouTube. Actually, you can hear the thunder snow. First time I ever heard thunder snow. It was awesome. Excuse me. Huge storm, accurately predicted. Places in Newberry got almost a foot of snow. That was kind of like the jackpot area of the storm, was right there near Newberry, as you can tell off the map. I think here in Lexington, I remember measuring like 4.5 inches of snow. What was crazy is it snowed more than what they thought. And then it went to freezing rain for several hours, and then it went more to like a freezing mist. And I think the ice totals were, here it is. Yep, this is it. Good 1/4 inch of ice, which is ice storm criteria ice. So that fell on top of the snow, so it made everything slick. It was a dangerous storm. What was crazy about that storm is it stayed cold several days afterwards. And that, to this day, I don't think I remember seeing snow linger around as much as I did that from my memory. It stayed on the ground for 4 or 5 days in spots. I remember looking at, there was one patch of snow and ice just wouldn't melt. It stayed around for 7 or 8 days, and it was just cold. It's cold, and that was a really cool storm. Ended up being the last storm for several years. Next storm wasn't a huge storm, but it was. This was the one that caused the ice jam in January of 2014 in Atlanta. There was so much cold air associated with it. It was an overrunning event where you had a big time cold front that slid through, and then moisture that overran the cold air that was getting in place. And this one was kind of a bust. Not really, but a little bit. I think prior to this storm hitting, this is late January 2014, by the way. Prior to the storm hitting, I think a lot of people thought that Columbia and stuff areas could get, maybe 3 to 6 inches of snow. I think we ended up getting about 2.5 inches, a little bit of ice. Here's a map of that storm, by the way, here in Central Midlands. 2 to 3 inches of snow. I think I measured about 2.5. But fairly average. I think what was crazy about this storm is it caused a lot of hype because it was so cold, so much cold air involved with this storm, and it was a cool storm. I remember it just being really cold afterwards, and here's the Greenville totals. Not much up there. This was kind of a storm that was supposed to be more big towards the coast. A big old ice storm potential down there. As you can see, even us in the Midlands got a little bit of ice off that. But I remember Jim Cantori. That was when Jim Cantori kicked the college guy down at maybe College of Charleston. I think he was reporting down there, and he just kicked him because he tried to get in the chute. But that was a lot of hype for a big time ice storm down there, and I don't think it materialized as much as they thought. But it was still a pretty big event for everyone in the state. Even them little bit of totals in Greenville, that was significant because it was so much cold air in place. So half an inch of snow falling at 25 degrees, I mean, that's going to even cover the roads. Don't sound like a lot, but when it's that cold, it is. So that storm was really cool. Personally, my all-time favorite storm since my 28 years of living was February 12th to 14th, or no, 11th to 13th, 2014. It came 2 weeks after the previous storm I just talked about. Weather Channel named it Winter Storm Pax. I'll always remember that. The build-up, the hype, the pure panic leading up to this storm was like nothing I've ever seen. Originally 48 hours out, Columbia was going to be in the bullseye of a massive ice storm. 1 to 2 inches of ice, which is a huge deal when it comes to freezing rain. That is catastrophic ice totals. I remember them putting out these crazy graphics, and it looks like I don't have it on here. These crazy graphics of showing, up to 2 to 3 inches of ice accrual falling, and I was like, there's no way this is going to happen. Sure enough, it happened. Jim Cantori ended up being in Columbia. That's when you know it's real. He ended up going to Augusta instead because there ended up being more cold air in the upper atmosphere than previously thought. So the big ice storm potential shifted a little more south. Some radar images, that's just crazy, guys, for real. Just the ice involved in this, it was catastrophic. Funny story here, not funny, but it was crazy. I think, totals wise, where I lived in Lexington, South Carolina, 3 inches of sleet, and 3 inches of anything don't sound like a lot, but when you're talking sleet, sleet is many, right? It takes forever to add up, but we had like 8 hours of heavy sleet. Sleet takes is a lot more dangerous on roads too than I think of snow. Just massive amounts of sleet. Yeah, so like I said, this storm was a huge learning storm for me. I think I broke my own personal record for hours in a row that I stayed up, and at least 36 hours, something like that. But I kind of learned more on the atmospheric dynamics that come with winter storm and what causes. I knew what causes sleet, and I knew what it took to cause snow, sleet, and freezing rain, but I learned a lot off this storm. To really sit there and be in the transition zone of a storm like that storm was neat, because I saw all forms of winter precipitation here in Lexington, South Carolina, which is where I lived at the time. And it started out briefly as snow, sleeted for 8 to 10 hours, freezing rain, then went to snow briefly at the end of the storm, And it was just a wild storm. It was long too. I think the 11th of February there was like a pre-storm kind of you would say that gave the upper Midlands up to Charlotte and stuff a couple inches of snow. Even in Irmo it was snowing on that part, and then the main event moved in overnight that night. And I remember this is the story I have of this storm. I worked at Husqvarna in Orangeburg. And we were scheduled to work from 4:30 to 3 in the morning. Man, those were some rough days, working 2 jobs. But I remember I was like, man, I really wish they would cancel work, but they didn't. They said that I think the freezing rain and the mixture of precipitation was supposed to move in at about 2 in the morning. And they said they would let out work at 1. That's peak season for them, February and stuff. So it was hard for them to cancel work altogether. But I remember walking out of work, and it was probably around 31, 32 degrees out there in Orangeburg, and it was starting to sprinkle. And I remember getting in my car, turning on my windshield wipers, and the windshield just immediately froze over. And I remember thinking, holy crap, I'm about to have to drive 45 miles to Columbia in this crap. Thankfully, when I got on the interstate and headed back to Columbia, I kind of drove out of it. I drove into a period of sleet and drove out of the initial push of precip and got to Lexington, South Carolina good. 30 minutes later, it started snowing, but just a crazy storm. And I think I stayed up from then all the way until like the 2 days later, just watching the storm unfold. And it was a fun storm too. I had sleet is slick, guys. I don't know if you ever been somewhere that's got 2 to 3, 4 inches of sleet. Holy cow. I was sitting out there with a skimboard, like you do at the beach, and I was skimming on this sleet, and it was the funnest I've ever had physically in a winter storm. And it was just a ball. I had a good time. I actually just thought of something else to add to the 2014 storm before I wanted to post this video. That 2014 mid-February storm, winter storm packs, I was mentioning it brought, Columbia Midlands area was in the transition zone, brought several inches of sleet. But what I didn't mention is the catastrophic ice totals in the southern Midlands and just the kind of, I guess you can say, the northern low country down towards Bamberg, Orangeburg, Aiken, Augusta. Catastrophic, millions of dollars in damage, ice damage. I remember specifically when I went back to work in Orangeburg, several days after the storm, probably like that following Sunday or Monday, and just it looked like a hurricane had went through. There was so much tree damage and just so much damage. There was trees in the interstate, and it was just crazy. I think that was probably one of the biggest ice storms in recent memory for many people here in South Carolina, even bigger than the 2004 storm. Pretty sure it was bigger than that storm. Northern Midlands and the upstate got mostly snow and missed out on the bad ice totals. But yeah, I just want to add that because that needs to be reiterated as part of that storm. Them folks affected, just major damage from Aiken to Bamberg to Orangeburg to Florence. Major ice totals. So yeah, I just want to add that part too on that section of the storm. I missed this storm. This one actually happened in 2013, so I'm going to go back a year. It didn't really affect Columbia much where I live. This was a convective event. It happened on February 16th, 2013. This was an awesome event. That was the second time I ever heard thunder snow. And Greenville, the National Weather Service in Greenville actually has a really cool write-up on this. Basically what happened is that morning you had a kind of some moisture that moved through that kind of gave places like Rock Hill and stuff a brief mix of rain and snow, and then it moved out and the sun came out, and you had like these cumulus clouds building and you could tell it was, you could tell, man, it was just going to be. They were calling it too. They said that we could have some convective snow showers that could happen, and all of a sudden, this band of snow formed in the foothills. I don't have any graphics of that, but this band of snow formed in the foothills, and Brad Panovich in Charlotte, cool guy to follow if you aren't following him. He was watching this like a hawk, and it was coming, and it was moving more into the Piedmont of North Carolina and South Carolina, the upstate, and this thing was forming, and there was reports from this band as it moved closer to like Rock Hill and stuff that it was covering the ground in seconds and minutes. And I was thinking, up to that point, winter had been uneventful for everybody, even like places in Charlotte. I mean, there was nothing going on, and I'm thinking in my head, man, that would be cool to see that. So I made a spontaneous last-second decision to drive from Irmo, from where I lived at the time, to Rock Hill with my dad to try to see what this band was. This band of heavy convective snow, and man, I'm sitting here trying to look at the accumulation map for that event that I have. Here it is right here. As you can see right here, this thing moved across the upstate of South Carolina and dropped. I mean, this was not called for at all. This band was a slow-moving band of convective snow. Convective means it's like a thunderstorm in the snow. It hits and it just drops some heavy precip fast. And where I was in Rock Hill, just north of Rock Hill, man, it put 3 to 4 inches of snow on the ground. But the coolest thing about this event, guys, is I wish that I could physically show y'all, visually show y'all, is I got to Rock Hill in the early afternoon before that band was coming. You could see the band coming. It looked like a line of freaking thunderstorms. And it was about 44, 45 degrees, and it looked like cumulus clouds in freaking winter. And it was coming, and I got to my dad's 30 minutes before it hit, and I was out there just waiting on it and following Twitter and reports that this thing was dropping an inch of snow in like 30 minutes. I'm like, man, this is going to be epic. Sure enough, it lived up to all the expectations. All of a sudden, this is the first time I've ever experienced grapple, which is basically like a hybrid mix of snow and sleet. I don't know how else to explain it really, but all of a sudden this grapple started falling, and it wasn't snow. It was like I said, just like a snow sleet combination. And that time I didn't really know what grapple was, and a crack of thunder just popped out of nowhere. And they were saying it was lightning and thunder in this band, and it just unleashed this whiteout. I mean, it covered the ground in 30 seconds. It made the ground look white. I'd never seen anything like it. And eventually that heavy grapple kind of just went to a steady snow for 4 or 5 hours. And like I said, it accumulated, going back to this map. I mean, right there south and 3 miles southwest of Edgemore, 5 inches of snow. I know I got 4 inches right there north Rock Hill. And that was a cool event. I learned off that too, because I just never seen anything like that before. So that was really cool. I know some of y'all might remember it because it really wasn't expected, and it was just a really, really cool event. So what I didn't know is after that 2012 February storm here in the Midlands, that would be the last time personally that I lived somewhere that was being affected by a major winter storm here in South Carolina. I have not physically, I guess you can say, reside somewhere that where I could sit out there and enjoy it and forecast it and learn off of it. Since that 2014 storm, we're coming up on 6 years now here in central South Carolina since we've had a major winter storm. We've had events, but nothing major. 6 years now that 6 years since Lexington or Richland County has been under a winter storm watch or warning, and it's just crazy. I got a couple more events to talk about. This one being 2 years in a row we had an early December storm, but the one in 2018 affected the state more than the one prior. And this was, as you can look at this graphic, this was the 2018 storm. I just realized I skipped the early 2018 storm, so I guess we'll go back to that. But this was the 2018 December 9th storm. Man, I've been talking a lot, so I'm starting to slip up. I actually have cool experience with this storm just because I just happened to plan a trip to Gatlinburg with the family that weekend, because it happened that one weekend. And so I got to see a little bit of the storm, but again, Gatlinburg being on the bad side of the CAD, west side of cold air damming of the wedge, they didn't really get much, but I had to drive back through it, so that was wild. This storm was a bust for places like York County, Mecklenburg County in North Carolina, and even Chester County. They were forecasting there originally 4 to 6 inches of ice and snow, and it just did not materialize. That rain-snow line just kind of hoodooed everybody in that area. But places like Gaffney, to just north of Spartanburg, even Greenville got several inches of snow. And it was an awesome storm just because it happened before Christmas. It happened around Christmas time. That's always fun, something I've always personally dreamed of seeing. I know y'all hear me talk about it a lot on Twitter and stuff. Just a cool event for them guys up there, especially Greer area, Gaffney area. Really cool storm up there. I actually drove from Asheville from Gatlinburg back to Rock Hill, and Rock Hill just got just some maybe half an inch of sleet. It was just lame. But let's go. We can go back to that coastal storm in early January that I know a lot of y'all people on the coast remember. So this was probably 2017, 2018 winter was probably the biggest heartbreak winter for me. It about done me in. It caused me to be a little bit more negative, I guess you can say, because we were missed in every direction where I live here in Lexington, South Carolina. But what was awesome is that the coast on January 3rd, 2018 got a really neat coastal event that was just isolated to places in the Eastern Midlands, PD area, and just the coastal area. Let's see, here's a good radar image. I don't know if this is going to show up for you guys, but I'll try to make it where it does. But as you can see, it was just limited to the coast. Good old Columbia got what you call a good old Virga storm, where there was just too much dry air in place. It was just such a cold. That was where 2 days prior on New Year's Day, where it didn't get above 32 degrees here in Columbia. There was so much cold air in place, guys. If we could have just got an hour of snow here in Columbia, we probably would have got an inch of snow. But we didn't. The precip just did not move far west enough. And as you can see, places, this is a National Weather Service in Charleston, totals in Charleston area. Y'all got several inches of snow down there near the coast, which y'all deserve all that because y'all don't ever get to see cool stuff like that. So it was a very exciting storm. Here's a more broader view of the storm. Just a big time storm. And even places in Orangeburg near Sumter, they got a lot more than they were forecasted. It just happened to, the dry air happened to erode faster, and y'all got a lot more snow than was expected. And it was just a nasty cutoff in the storm also. But even a half an inch of snow, I got a buddy named Bryce who drove down to Cope area. The half an inch of snow I think they got, which is not too far southeast from Columbia, but just a half an inch of snow made the whole area look like a winter wonderland basically. But Sumter was big winter, 6 inches of snow. Myrtle Beach got completely screwed in this storm. They were supposed to get the same totals that Charleston got, but just dry air just would not cooperate. I felt really bad for some meteorologists in that area. They just forecast got completely busted from, you just can't predict things like that. Just dry air, and it just would not, they just could not materialize anything like they expected. But a very, very cool storm. Here's a close-up view of the National Weather Service here in Columbia did. As you can tell, just look how close. Richland, look at the far eastern county of Richland County. Just so close, but just no cigar, man. Let me tell you guys, this storm hurt me. I mean, it was hard watching that, because there was a lot of hype going up to the storm of people thinking this thing is going to turn out just like the 2000 Carolina Crusher, where it was going to move in further west than predicted, and it was going to catch everybody off surprise, and it just didn't. It didn't happen, and I bought into that. I was on some forums that really bought into that, and it just did not happen. It was super disappointing. Very happy for the coast, but for me, it was just really disappointing. And really, guys, that's about it. So that's about it, guys. Really, the Columbia area, from probably Aiken, Augusta, Aiken, Lexington, Columbia, Fairfield County, Blythewood area, Newberry even. We just have not seen anything since 2014, that February storm. And the drought lives on. We're about near, that's almost 6 years ago. It'll be 6 years in mid-February. So I kind of put this together just to kind of to bring back some good memories for me. Hope it brings back some good memories for y'all. This video took a lot of time to put together, so I'd appreciate any feedback as far as memories, whether you comment memories on the YouTube video itself, on Facebook, on Twitter where I post this video. It's cool. I love hearing y'all stories from anybody, whether it's in person, whether it's on social media, anything. So I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all who watched the video, and keep watching. I'm a big weather junkie, and I'm still waiting for a major event here. Please subscribe, please like the video, and I appreciate all y'all, and I hope that this brought back some good memories for you guys on what has been a very boring winter. So y'all have an awesome day. Appreciate y'all.